Socialism, communism, and capitalism. Words you hear all the time, often interchangeably, and almost always by people who have no fucking clue what any of them mean. So let's start off with the layman explanations of what the theories of all of these systems are. That'd be pure capitalism, pure communism, pure socialism. Now keep in mind, these are all just the theories. They never have existed, never will exist, because they can't exist in their pure forms in the real world. But it gives us our starting point. It's the idea of how they are supposed to work. Pure capitalism, guided by the invisible hand that steals all your shit and gives it to rich people. The idea behind pure capitalism is solely based on supply, demand, and competition. And the foundation is based on private ownership of all economic resources. And the only regulation is the market itself, supply, demand, and competition. Or the invisible hand. So the theory is that when demand is created by people needing and wanting stuff, capitalists, private owners of the means of production, they will work to create supply to fill that demand because as a result, they will be rewarded with money when people buy their shit. And what would stop that capitalist from controlling the supply completely and charging whatever the hell he wants is competition, which is just other capitalists who also want some of the money that the original capitalist is currently getting. And they do that by also supplying that demand and selling it cheaper than the first guy to try to steal market share. And the idea is this happens again and again and again until you've got a whole bunch of options, a whole bunch of people competing, and you have the lowest price possible that's still profitable to get these goods and services. Which would work great until, you think about it. Problem is, it's a competition, right? That's the whole premise that it's based off of. And in a competition, there's a winner. And that winner is the dude with the most money. And the guy with the most money can then buy up all of his competition. And if they don't want to sell, he can buy up all the raw resources so his competition can't produce anything. And if he can't buy up all the raw resources, he can just lose some money for a little bit. Sell that product or service at a loss for a while, cheaper than anybody else could provide that product or service for, and put them out of business that way because the smaller competitors can't operate that long at a loss. And then once that happens, you no longer have capitalism, you have a monopoly. The whole system will fall apart almost immediately, every time. There's other issues like labor being a commodity, and it's in the capitalist's best interest to pay people as little as possible for the work that they do. And then you end up with people getting paid literal starvation wages and getting paid with actual monopoly money in the case of old logging industries and coal mines. And then not only do you end up getting people literally starving to death and homeless because they don't have any money, you get a very stagnant economy very quickly because nobody has any money to buy anything. Also end up with other issues like things like healthcare and education as a strictly for-profit commodity means that people who can't afford it just die or don't get an education. Things that are also bad for the overall economy. So as a response to just how fucking terrible capitalism came during the Industrial Revolution, the theories of socialism and communism came about. So now with socialism, there's still private ownership. So you can own stuff, you can still own your TV, you can still own your car. But then the economic drivers, the means of production, are communally owned by everybody. So like the factories and the natural resources and the farmland, we all own it together. We all own a piece, kind of like a co-op. And then all of that is managed by a democratically elected government. Now, in this theory, you still have classes. You still have wealthier people and poorer people, but it's not to the extremes of capitalism. So you start off with a baseline. Everybody has everything they need. A roof over their head, food, healthcare, etc. Then after that, your compensation is based on what you contribute to the economy. So the amount of money that you personally make for the industry that you work for is what you personally get. Minus, your portion of what goes to everybody's basic needs and the things that make the country run. Now, the problem with this theory is that you've got everything being managed by a democratically run government. And those move really fucking slow. Since the government has to plan the economy, how much to produce to satisfy demand, that slow-moving democratically elected government does not respond very quick to market changes, and then you end up with shortages and surpluses where you don't want them. It also tends to be a lot slower type of economy in developing new products and services. And that's again because you have a select group of people making all the decisions on what the economy is going to invest in and develop. And that's because we have a group of people who are not always going to agree on what we should do with the market. And it's also impossible for one entity to have a good handle on the pulse of every market in the economy. So whereas in capitalism, where everybody in the country can in theory respond to a market demand, a very bottom-up type of economy in theory, you have a very top-down management style that makes it very difficult for new ideas and new markets to be quickly responded to. Then communism, the kumbaya economy. It's the hippie commune of economies. The idea is that there's no classes, nobody owns anything, and everybody is equal. Everybody contributes what they're able to the economy and to society, and everybody gets what they need from the economy and from society. So you don't get money, you just go to work and you don't get paid, but then you go to the grocery store and you get your allotment of food and take it home to your house that's provided by the government. Obviously, there's a lot of problems with this. First, all the bad things about pure socialism I mentioned are the same in communism. You have one central government trying to respond to all market demands and societal needs, and that's really not feasible. So you get a lot of inefficiencies, a lot of oversupply or undersupply, and a very stagnant economy. The other problem is that that central government really can't be democratically elected, because as soon as you have a democratic election, you have a majority and a minority, and those are classes. Then the majority class gets their interests better represented because they're the people who elected the leadership. The minority class doesn't, and then you no longer have a classless society, which kind of defeats the whole purpose that we started with, which was to have no classes. And then if you don't have a democratically elected government, you're just relying on the people running the show to do the right thing by everybody, and people are greedy fucks, so that usually falls apart pretty quickly. Karl Marx's solution to that is guns. Lots and lots of guns. Side note, I always think it's funny when people act like gun control is communism because they don't know what communism is. Pure communism makes the NRA look like Beto. Pure communism's like the Oprah Winfrey show for guns. You get a Kalashnikov and you get a Kalashnikov, everybody gets AK-47s. Anyway, that was Karl Marx's solution. If the central government was being a douchebag, you shoot them. This obviously is not a great solution because you're never going to get everybody happy with the current situation. And if the means to change that is just to shoot the current situation, you just kind of end up in a state of constant revolution until one entity just manages to get enough muscle to maintain control. Remember that one episode in Futurama where they had the planet with all the water people? And he became ruler of the water people by drinking the current ruler of the water people. So they just kept drinking each other every 5 minutes until Fry came along and accidentally drank the current ruler. And then they couldn't drink him because he was a human and, not liquid. And that's basically how communism always devolves into the Cold War era style communism we all know and love. Now, Karl Marx always viewed socialism as the transitional period between capitalism and communism. Now that we've seen that, capitalism and communism both don't fucking work, socialism, even though there's a pure socialism definition, it's not a pure economy. It's a blend of two different economies. Socialized capitalism to varying degrees is what we truly have throughout the Western world. This is where certain aspects of the economy are communally owned and democratically managed, and other aspects of the economy are privately owned and regulated to varying degrees. So in the United States, the socialist part of our socialized capitalism would be, roads and bridges, public land, Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security. And the capitalist part is, everything you buy from a private company and all the services you pay for from private companies. And then the degree to which those private entities are publicly regulated and taxed is kind of the crossover between the socialism and the capitalism. And then, we're really on the failing capitalism side of that spectrum compared to the rest of the world. So other countries have more public services. Socialized stuff like healthcare and higher education and childcare. And, more public regulation of the capitalist stuff like trains that don't just fall off the track in the middle of town. But anyway, that's the difference between capitalism, socialism, and communism, and how we're trying to mesh the better parts of them together to make something sort of functional as an economy that works for everybody and not just the rich douchebags.